Today we're going to be talking about the passive perks in Deep Rock Galactic, and I'm going to be going over the 5 best perks. I don't really like saying best because a lot of these are interchangeable and a lot of this comes down to personal preference, but I have been getting a lot of questions recently from newer players picking up the game or players coming back. Hey, which perk should I use? Which perk should I max out first? And I felt like I would do this for the 5 best perks, or at least what I would consider the 5 best perks, not counting the extra perk slot perk. If you see that one, always grab that one because having more perks is generally going to be better than not having that. So let's begin with my number 5 pick. This is Thorns. Thorns is a very, very simple passive overclock, but a pretty useful one. At least I find it to be pretty useful. Thorns makes it so whenever you get hit with melee damage, then whatever hits you also takes melee damage in return. This ranges based on what level of Thorns you have, whether it's 6, 12, 18, or 24 points of damage that's reflected back. Even though I said that this does melee damage, I guess it technically doesn't because it doesn't trigger Vampire whenever it does hit. But having 24 damage is usually enough because this is good for just chipping grunts out, especially if they're already low and they hit you. This can be really useful if you don't really want to pay attention to them, like you're trying to grab a resupply or trying to do an objective. If there's just one grunt hitting you, Thorns should kill it. It can also kill off smaller enemies like swarmers, which can be pretty annoying if you can't easily smack them or you don't have a good AoE weapon like a flamethrower or the autocannon or something. It's also just really good for getting rid of the little jellyfish, and even against larger enemies, it's still applying some damage, so I find it pretty useful to throw on every class and not really think about it. There is one thing that you do have to keep in mind with Thorns though, and that's that it can't trigger multiple times one after another. There is a small delay between when it can hit. This is 0.75 seconds, so after something hits you, if there's a bunch of small things attacking you, it's not just going to trigger and hit everything at once or trigger one after another. It's going to trigger to the first enemy that hits you and then take a second to come back up, so then you can hit another enemy with your Thorns. Very simple passive perk, but a pretty useful one to throw on any class. Coming in at number 4, we have Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth is another very simple passive perk. This one makes it so that you get more healing when taking red sugar, and once it's maxed out, then you also get 20% movement speed for the next 10 seconds whenever you get red sugar. This can be any amount of red sugar. You can just pick up just 1 health from this and still get the movement speed bonus. Your resources are always limited in every single cave. This includes your nitra, your gold, whatever ammo you have, your resupplies, and of course red sugar. Since red sugar is generally the main healing item outside of a couple other options, which we'll kind of talk about here in a little bit, it is a resource that you would like to get the most out of. And having max level Sweet Tooth, you can get a decent amount more health from this. And staying at full health is going to always be important on any difficulty setting. This way you can just tank through more damage, and then you don't have to worry so much about getting swarmed or getting one shot. This perk is pretty good on every class, but I find it especially good on the Gunner class. Gunner kind of makes the best use of this in my opinion, just because Gunner doesn't really have the most amount of mobility. They're generally the least mobile out of any of the classes, so being able to grab this can be very, very useful and just get that extra little bit of movement speed and overall survivability. Gunner also tends to be an extremely tanky class, so being even tankier with that is pretty useful in my opinion, but it can work well in any of the classes. Coming in at number 3, we have Vampire. What Vampire does is whenever you melee kill a medium-sized enemy or larger, you will get up to 5 health regained. This does scale for each level. It starts out at 2 health, ends at 5 health. You definitely want to get all the way up there so you can get the most amount of health out of this. And unlike something like Thorns, this can trigger for every single thing that you kill. It does only trigger on the actual kill itself, so in some instances you can't get Vampire from this. If you hit something and then Thorns triggered and killed it, that wouldn't count as melee. Now, just getting 5 health back doesn't seem like such a huge deal in Deep Rock, especially when you can get like a massive amount back from resupplies and from red sugar. But this one does make it so that you can slowly regenerate your health and keep up your high amounts of health throughout the entire game. And this is mostly going to be done through pickaxe attacks and pickaxe power attacks. This is far easier if you have the daily beers of either Skull Crushers or Slayer Stout. Both of those do help with this, either with regular attacks or with power attacks. There is also 2 other weapons that count towards this too, those being the impact axes and the drills from Driller. Driller kind of makes the best use of Vampire here because killing enemies with drills is a pretty effective option since the drills can inflict fear on them as well as they also just rip apart armor, which is really good. And if enemies are frozen, thanks to something like your cryo cannon, it is very, very easy to get a lot of health back from this. You can also just get it back from your other 2 primaries too. Slowdowns with either of them work really well. And Vampire also pairs really well with certain active perks. It pairs especially well with Iron Will. Iron Will is probably one of the best active perks in the game. And with this you can res yourself. And if you get health back, well, you have resed yourself from any source, whether that be from Vampire or from getting a resupply or getting red sugar. then you can pick yourself back up effectively and reset the mission, which can be very, very useful, and it's probably one of your best uses in conjunction with Vampire. It also is extremely good with Berserker. Berserker is another active perk that lets you go berserk and just start swinging your pickaxe power attack really fast. Well, it just resets your cooldown really quick, and you can get a lot of health back just from that. Coming in at number 2, we have Born Ready. Born Ready reloads all of your weapons once they are put away. This does trigger after so long. At the highest, it's 5 seconds. At the lowest, it's 15 seconds. Having a 15-second reload is pretty long, but this does reload all of your equipment, which can be particularly useful on certain classes, because this can also reload your flare gun on Scout, your platform gun on Inji, and your zipline launcher on Gunner. Very, very useful. As well as a 5-second reload might seem like a long time, but if you're not using that weapon for the entirety of 5 seconds, then you might as well have it reloaded. There are certain builds that can take advantage of this. Born Ready is generally good on all of the classes, however, it does specialize more on certain classes than others. Now, there are certain weapons that don't work with Born Ready, weapons that just don't need to reload, those being the minigun, the cryo cannon, the EPC, the microwave gun, and the shard diffractor. So if you're taking any of those weapons, you may just want to skip out on Born Ready, as it could be more useful to just not take this, especially if you're going like cryo cannon, microwave gun on driller. Then there's no real reason to take it since it can't reload your drills or reload your C4. So for driller, this perk is definitely lower on the list of priorities, at least compared to some of the other classes. This one's just very useful for both new players and for veteran players. For veteran players, it makes it so you can stay in the fight longer, and for new players, it really incentivizes you to be switching throughout your entire loadout. That way you can just keep coming back and keep fighting as long as you can. This will just extend your overall effectiveness and make it a little bit easier for you to fight off crowds of enemies. And then for number 1, probably to nobody's surprise, we have Resupplier. Resupplier is ridiculously good as a passive perk. What Resupplier does is whenever you're interacting with a resupply, it goes faster. This is up to 50% faster at its max rank. And once you have gotten a resupply, you get 25% more health than you otherwise would attached to it. That part is really good, but not only that, it also reloads all of your weapons. Both the weapons that you're holding and the weapons that you're putting away, as well as your equipment, like your flare gun and like your platform gun. So this is really good for a couple reasons. First up, this is just super convenient to have. Nobody really wants to spend extra time interacting with a resupply that you don't need to. Just grab it as quickly as you can. So that's the first one. The second part is once you have that extra health regain from this, you're almost always going to be at nearly full health or completely at full health once you've interacted with this. The third is just getting a Born Ready status effect where all of your gear is reloaded so you can instantly fight again. And then the last major upside to this one is that it can come in absolutely clutch in the worst situations that you could think of, because if you need to use Iron Will once again, you can res yourself, run over to a resupply, and not really have to worry about anything. You have plenty of time to actually get there. This can also be really useful if you're in the middle of a chaotic fight and you realize that you're out of ammo or nearly about to be out of ammo. You can create enough space fairly easily to still be able to grab a resupply from this. And then the last reason why this is really good is if you have breathing room on your suit, whenever you're rezzed, you have 6 seconds of invulnerability where nothing can injure you. If you go over to a resupply quick enough, or if you were down right next to a resupply, you can grab that resupply thanks to Resupplier before that 6 seconds is going to be up. That way you can get right back into the fight, and you will be in a much better position than you otherwise would be. So these are my top 5 picks for passive perks in Deep Rock. Now, of course, there's a lot of other good passive perks, and you don't need to take all of these all the time. I switch them out pretty frequently, so feel free to leave your favorites down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. I will be going over active perks as well, but those function a little bit differently, so I wanted to save them for a different list. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye!